The ticket number 12 is in. Let us go back to New York.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Cover One, the podcast, episode number 42. I am Russell Brown, and alongside me, another week in a row here, 2 weeks in a row with Bryce Rossler. Bryce, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. You always know you got a good friend whenever they're willing to jeopardize their image to have you on their podcast.
Yeah, well, especially me, first of all, and then second of all, you do it 2 weeks in a row. I mean, good job. Yeah,
I'm just glad it's not a video podcast like where we screen share, because about half an hour ago, my boss told me that I had to shave my beard, so I was just going to go ahead and do it. Not a morning person, didn't want to get up early and do it. So I started doing it, and my electric shaver went out halfway through. So like one side of my face is this mountain beard, and the other is very close, like 5 o'clock shadow. It's bad. So
I've had those moments too when the electric razor goes out, but fortunately, my boss doesn't tell me to do those things. So
I'm just glad it happened tonight, and I didn't wait until tomorrow to do it, because I would have looked like an idiot at work all day.
All right, folks, we got a ton of stuff to get into today. Shrine game is tomorrow, or technically today whenever you listen to this, and we kind of want to go over the Shrine week and some of the practices, some things that we've read. Neither one of us, Bryce or I, were down there in St. Petersburg for the Shrine game and the Shrine practices. Just kind of some stuff that we'll go through with that. We'll talk kind of our stock into the All-Star games regarding the Shrine game, the Senior Bowl. We'll give a Senior Bowl preview, tons of players to get into, picks for the AFC and NFC Championship. But I do want to start with something that Bryce is actually working on, as he is a scouting academy guy. Some things that he'll be doing is taking a look at pro players pretty frequently, I would assume, with the scouting academy. And I'm assuming one of those guys is Albert Wilson. Is that correct?
Yeah, Albert Wilson. I spent the last couple days watching his 2017 tape, watched 5 games of his, watched him against New England, watched him against Buffalo, Oakland, and the last 2 weeks against Miami and Denver.
Solid. And what was the evaluation from Albert Wilson? I mean, maybe not like everything that you're going to be writing down in an article, but some of the good, the bad, the ugly with Albert Wilson, who I think is a very talented player.
Man, I like Albert Wilson. I think he's a good wide receiver too. He's probably not somebody that you're going to feature as your go-to guy, just because he's a little bit limited in some of the things he can do. He's not the biggest receiver. He'll get hung up on press. Like if a longer cornerback gets a jam on him, he struggles to work through that. He doesn't do a great job of shielding defenders from the catch point, and his hands are a little bit inconsistent. But I like him a lot. He's a competitor. That's probably the biggest thing that stands out when you watch him. I mean, he's getting after it every play. Really good blocker. His release is good too. He's got nice footwork. Mm-hmm. And I also like his yak ability. He had something like 5.5 yards after catch average.
Oh wow!
2017, which to give you an idea, like Tyreek Hill was like 6.2 or something like that, and Golden Tate was 5.8. So he's up there.
Yeah.
But I think he's a good player. I think some team is going to get. He was sort of underutilized in Kansas City. I mean, they work their backs a lot in the passing game, and Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, obviously big fixtures there. But I think some team is going to get a good second wide receiver B type.
Yeah. Well, do you think part of, Albert Wilson is like kind of like a part of the scheme? They do a lot of, screen passes to receivers. Do you think like those yards after the catch with screen plays, do you think those him being, 5.5 yards after the catch, correct, or something?
Yeah. Oh, part of that is the routes that he ran. Going back over, I know he was used on screens a lot. Kansas City likes to run those RPOs. He was used on a lot of drags, crossing routes, things like that, getting the ball in the short to intermediate areas. But he's good with the ball in his hands. I mean, he's got really good vision. He sets up his blocks in the open field well.
Right.
On screens, he goes from standstill at the catch point. He bursts really quickly. He's elusive. So some of it is how he was used, but he's his skill set lends itself to that well.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I got you. I was just kind of curious because, I'm not a student of the scouting academy or anything like that. And I was just kind of curious as to if, when you guys are evaluating players, if you look at that and do you not necessarily hold it against the player, but do you maybe mark them down a grade or two or whatever the case may be on however the grading scale is? Do you knock him a couple of points for maybe the scheme that he's running and something like that, yards after the catch? Well, he's catching a lot of screen passes. He should have a lot of yards after the catch, Dan
Hatman, the director of the Scouting Academy, is really big on context. That's one of the first things he'll teach you is he wants to understand how a player is being used. Mm-hmm. He wants to know three things. He wants to know how the player is being used, what they can do, and what they can't do.
Yeah.
And to kind of take everything into consideration and synthesize the big picture. So that's part of it. If you see a guy getting a lot of screen passes, getting the ball on drags a lot, well, yeah, you want him to generate some yak, but it's more about evaluating the traits than the scheme, if that makes any sense.
Right. I got you. Okay. I was just kind of curious as to how that all worked out, but Albert Wilson, I believe I saw you on Twitter. You were talking about him a little bit. And is he going to be a free agent? Is that correct?
He is a free agent. Yep.
Do you think he goes and stays at Kansas City, or do you think he goes out and maybe sides with another team? And if so, what team do you think he might fit?
See, I don't know if he'll stay because last year he was a free agent too. He was an undrafted free agent in 2014, spent the first 3 years with Kansas City. And then I think late April, so I think it was a decent bit into the free agency process. Sure, but he was on like a 1-year deal for like $1.8 million or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So he could come back. I mean, they have Tyreek Hill and they've got Chris Conley. I'm not a Chiefs guy, so I don't know what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he'd be a good fit. Any team that likes, he's going to be a guy that's going to work the short to intermediate areas of the field. When he's running full speed, he has some issues with change of direction. I'm not sure how much because some of the games I watched, he had a hamstring issue for.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much that clouds how much that factors in, how much of a hindrance that was for him. But he's going to work that short to intermediate area of the field. Was obviously used in a West Coast spread type of offense in Kansas City. I think that offense is a good fit for him.
Great.
You can use him on digs. You can use him on, curls. I think he's got good play speed. He can get up over the top on defenses. I think you can use him on go routes. I just think the thing you need to be wary of with him is you don't want to line him up as an X because you don't want him getting pressed a whole lot. And you don't want him to work the deep middle of the field on digs, and you don't want him working deep outs or comebacks on that just because of some of that change of direction issues I talked about. But other than that, I think there are a lot of teams that could use him. I'm trying to think of some teams.
I think Buffalo would be that was going to kind of be my next question.
Buffalo would probably be a good fit for him. Yeah. A good place for him, I'll tell you, would be Chicago because his offensive coordinator is obviously the coach there now, Matt Nagy, and they need receivers bad. So I could see him going to Chicago.
That would probably be number one on his list.
He'd be a good fit in Detroit too.
Yeah, he'd be a good fit with Carolina too, with Cam Newton, and they don't have anything at receiver at this point.
They do not, but I don't know. I don't know much about what their new offense is going to look like.
Right.
But I'm intrigued for him for Detroit because Golden Tate has been pounding the table for an extension and hadn't gotten it. So, and Golden Tate's kind of that yards after catch guy. He can work.
But that would really signal that hey, that's going to be the end of Golden Tate. You go out and you sign Albert Wilson to let's say a 3-year deal. I mean, odds are you're not getting Golden Tate back. You're not going to bring him back.
Right. I mean, he's about to turn 30. He had his original 5-year deal he signed back in 2014 is expiring.
Yeah.
He's up at the end of the season. I don't know what they plan to do with Tate. Obviously, he's not priority number one right now because they still have him under contract and got their free agents to think about in the draft. But if they were to do something with Wilson, I would agree with you. That would almost certainly signal the Golden Tate era in Detroit's coming to an end.
Right. Well, I mean, if Matt Patricia is going to be the head coach, if he's coming from New England, that's something that they normally do. They don't care how big your name is, unless you're Gronkowski or Tom Brady. You're probably going to be out the door no matter how big of a star you are. Yep. So I don't know. Interesting. I can't wait to read your breakdown on Albert Wilson. I think he's definitely a talented player. He had like 42 receptions last year, 3 touchdowns off the top of my head, if I remember that correctly.
Yep, that is correct.
So it'll be interesting to see where he falls in free agency. Free agency is always a fun time. That first day is just such a hectic day of constantly refreshing Twitter. But
free agency is fun. It's going to be fun until about May, and then we're just going to hit an absolute wall.
Yeah, it's going to be the longest 2 months ever, and we become baseball fans. And
let's not get that carried away.
Well, I mean, I'm a fan of baseball, but you are who you are. I mean, you are an Eagles fan, so that's fine.
I'm a big Eagles fan.
Cover One, the podcast, is brought to you by First Down Playbook. First Down Playbook is the #1 playbook resource for football coaches with over 30,000 plays. First Down Playbook is a database of youth, high school, and flag football plays, color-coded with coaching points for every position on every play. Check it out today at firstdownplaybook.com. That's First Down Playbook, one place, all the football. So like we said, we've got a ton of all-star game for the NFL draft to get into. Shrine Game, Senior Bowl. We're going to kind of try and pick and choose what we can with it, because if you're listening to other draft podcasts, odds are you've probably heard a ton of these names. And realistically, Senior Bowl hasn't happened yet. I'll be there next week. Unfortunately, Bryce will not be there with me. And the Shrine Game is tomorrow, and the Shrine Week practices have already happened. So we're pretty much just going off of what we've seen on Twitter or read or whatever the case may be. So kind of just going with the good, bad, ugly, some things that have kind of stood out to us with the Shrine Game. And I'll start as far as what I've read so far, and it's really the biggest name that I've seen the most hype for is Doris Fountain, the wide receiver out of Northern Iowa. He was a player that I mentioned as one of my 5 players that I think could have a really good week and maybe turn some heads. And the only reason why I knew who he was is simply because his marketing agent, Matt Allman, had reached out to me during the season and said, hey, pay attention to this guy. He's really talented, this and that. And I had worked with Matt a lot last year on a couple of players, and he was really talking up Doris. I was able to catch a game of his, and I was like, wow, he's not kidding. This kid's pretty talented. And then he comes out, he measures out at like 6'1", 210, fluid athlete, goes up and gets the ball at the catch point, and Fountain just looks like a physical specimen that you can play. Reminds me of kind of the Zay Jones hype a little bit last year, where, Jones came on and people thought Jones was good anyways, but then some of these all-star games happened, the combine happened, and he kind of just shot up boards. Obviously, Mel Kiper had him as like his 4th best receiver, but Mel Kiper's so out of touch it doesn't even matter. But with Fountain, he's just a guy that really stood out to me going into this thing, and here he is now, and he's standing out to everybody else. Do you have potentially anything that you know about Doris Fountain or anybody else that you've seen kind of stand out this week?
No, and I can't even claim to know who he was prior to this week, but I, like you, I've seen, I follow a lot of the guys that are at the Shrine Game covering it, and I've seen his name probably more than anybody else's. Mm-hmm. Seen some of his catches. I mean, he's getting up there and getting the ball. I mean, he looks good in drills. But prior to this week, I didn't have a clue who he was.
Right. And to be honest, I mean, if anybody's asking, hey, where's he at on your big board and where's he going to go in a mock draft? To be honest, I have no idea. I haven't even gotten that far. I'm not the type of guy to go out and put out a new big board every day or a mock draft every week. Mock drafts and big boards for me will be coming. For Bryce, I can't speak for Bryce and what he's got coming in the future. But, Fountain's one of those guys that I think you can potentially – you would have seen as like a day 3 guy at best. He's probably a for sure day 3 guy, probably going to be a day 2 guy at this point in the process unless something comes up within the next, 3 or 4 months. But I don't see that happening. Another name that kind of stood out was Marcel Frazier, who I was a fan of going into this. And I thought, I don't know, I guess I would have to pull up my tweets on it. And I said Marcel Frazier, and maybe I'm just comparing Missouri defensive ends to Missouri defensive ends, but Charles Harris was a guy that really kind of came on last year after all this, draft process stuff. And Charles Harris was a guy that pretty much was like borderline first rounder to pretty much for sure first rounder. And I felt that way about him. And the way I feel about Marcel Frazier is very similar. And I think, a guy like Harold Landry, Arden Key, these are guys that, I think Arden Key is probably going to be a second-round pick. I'm going to call it like it is. I think, and that's just me today on January the 19th. Marcel, I'm not a big fan of Arden Key. I truly am just not. I don't see it with him. I see a guy that when you look at his, his weight, what weight is he going to be playing at when I draft him? Is he 225 or is he 245? Can he play at 245? Do we really know he was 245 at LSU? And I mean, I'm not saying, undersized guys can't thrive in the league, but I'm sorry. The first guy that comes to mind when I think of an undersized linebacker or edge rusher is Aaron Maben. And we kind of know how that went for Buffalo. And I believe he went to the Jets after that, but I'm getting totally off topic here. Marcel Frazier, though, is the guy that had a very good week. And he's a player that I thought was probably, a second round pick. And now he's just like I thought with Charles Harris. I thought he was a second round pick. And now here he is kind of just moving up the board. So Frazier's a guy that I think could be a first round pick and should be a first round pick by the time the draft rolls around. So maybe I'm out of touch on that. Maybe it's way too of a hot take on this Friday evening, but I don't know. If you got anybody else, I'd love to hear it. Or if you want to just kind of piggyback onto that and say I'm crazy.
Yeah, so keeping with defensive line, couple names. One, I saw something really interesting from Jeff Risdon, who I write for over at the Browns Wire. He's at the game covering it. And apparently Kentavious Street is getting off the line really quickly in practices, which piqued my interest because when I watch Kentavious Street, everybody knows him as, he's a workout warrior, he's an athletic freak. And when you watch him on tape, that shows. But when I was watching him, I just wanted him so badly to be better than he was because I didn't like the way he used his hands. He didn't have much of a pass rush plan, but what I really didn't like was how he got off the ball. He was consistently one of the last linemen to get to, key the ball and fire off. Mm-hmm. So, and, I thought to myself, even if he could just get off the ball quicker, he could just use his athleticism to his advantage more. So if he's getting off the ball well in practices, I don't know what the disconnect or the reason for that is between what he showed on film and what's going on in practices. But if he starts getting off the ball, he should climb a little bit because that's the guy that has the potential to just kind of be a gap penetrator just based on his athleticism alone. He's kind of a tweener. He's like 6'2", 280. Yeah. So not exactly best length to play outside. A little undersized to play even 3 tech. So it'll be interesting to see how teams project him. But I thought that was interesting. And then another name, I didn't hear much about him, but P.J. Hall, a defensive tackle out of Sam Houston State, was somebody that interests me because when I was watching, because I'm a football junkie, I was watching Sam Houston State, Kennesaw State last month. I know not many people probably caught that game. P.J. Hall was all over the place. And he looks like somebody that was draftable. He's got pretty good quickness and looks good in pursuit, high motor player. So I didn't see much about him, but he was somebody that interested me. So I'm going to have to go double back through reports and see how he did because he definitely looked like he could, he's probably not, a 2 guy or anything, but he looked like somebody that could play on Sundays when I saw him just that one game.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. It's like it's so early in the process. It's like, you watch maybe one game from a guy or maybe 2 and it's, you're seeing brief clips here and there of a guy and you're like, man, I really can't dive into my opinion yet because I haven't sat down and watched 3 or 4 games on certain guys. And especially with, at this point, when you're not at these practices and you don't have the full breakdown of who's really standing out from your notes, because I'm not the type of guy that, we obviously have reliable sources on Twitter and I trust these guys, but it's I don't want to be taking their words and putting them on a podcast necessarily. And it's hard to say where do these guys project already at the process when, we've still got to get through the combine and pro days and all these things. But Street's an interesting name. And like you said, he's 6'2", 280, maybe 285. He's a guy that I think probably going to be a weak side defensive end and in a 4-3 scheme. I think that's probably a fair spot to put him. You might see him move inside on a 3rd and 11 or something like that and maybe play that 3 technique. But, like you said, can he really play there? I don't know. We'll see. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how he develops. I think tomorrow will be a very fun day to see where he goes. And lastly, I got 2 names, Brian Allen, center out of Michigan State, and Chad Thomas, defensive end out of Miami, Florida. I had
to get the Michigan State guy in there, huh?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be a Spartan if I didn't do that, No, he's coming in, he's playing a center spot. Is he going to be, a first rounder? Absolutely not. Is he going to be a day 2 pick? To be honest, I don't think he will be. I think he's probably going to be a day 3 guy, 4th rounder, 5th rounder, but I think he's a player that he could start right away, but I think that's risky. I think he's the type of guy that you probably want to sit back for a year, but realistically, he's a great leader. He's a physical player. He's a good run blocker. He passes the test as far as a pass blocker goes. I like the things that he can do as far as just going out there and that you might have him miss a play here or there, but realistically throughout the course of a game, you're probably going to get a pretty steady, consistent performance out of Brian Allen at 6'2", 300 pounds. Guys that are looking to, build up the depth of their offensive line, he makes a lot of sense. And then, Chad Thomas, I think he measured out about like 6'5".
Real quick before you move on to Chad Thomas, is Brian Allen related to Jack Allen by any chance?
Yes.
They are? Okay.
Yeah, there's it's just like the Bola brothers. The whole Bola family went to Michigan State. The Allens are all going to Michigan State. Allen's got a brother that is also on MSU right now. So it's how it's going to go. Their cousins are going to go there. Their nieces and nephews are going to go there. It's for me, it's awesome. It's fantastic. But as I move on to Chad Thomas, he was a guy out of Miami, Florida that I watched in the summer. I was very impressed with him. I wrote a piece for the Buffalo Bills for cover1.net, and I talked about Chad Thomas and kind of where I thought he fit. And I thought he would be a good fit for them because I thought the Bills needed some depth at defensive end, and I thought eventually Shaq Lawson was going to get hurt, which he did. And I like Shaq Lawson as a player and everything, but I think that piece that I wrote was pretty evident to the fact that they needed the depth. They needed another player. I think Chad Thomas is a guy that really boosted up his stock. He's going to be at the Senior Bowl now. He's a really good player. I think you can plug him in as a 3-4-5 technique. I think he's a 4-3 defensive end, to be honest. I think that's where he would be best suited. Whether you put him on the left side, right side, probably the left side would be the best, but that's just me. I think he's had a really good week from what I've read, and I think tomorrow we'll pretty much see that, and I think we'll see him attack some quarterbacks and things like that. I do want to get your opinion on 2 of the quarterbacks. One of them I don't think is a quarterback, and that's JT Barrett. And it's totally fine if you haven't watched a ton of film on these guys, but JT Barrett and Riley Ferguson out of Memphis, just kind of curious as to where you are with those 2 guys at the quarterback spot. And are you comfortable with one of your teams drafting those guys?
See, I would actually like the Lions to take a late round flyer on Riley Ferguson. I like his physical skill set. JT Barrett, you can keep. He had that one really, really good game against Penn State, but I mean, other than that, I haven't seen a lot from JT Barrett that I think will translate to the pro game. I mean, he's
H-back?
Maybe. I mean, he could probably be a serviceable backup to a team that like. I mean, he's probably scheme specific. A team that likes to run zone read and get their quarterback out would probably be a good fit for him. I don't know how much zone read Seattle's still doing, but that could be a fit.
Oh yeah.
Even the Eagles might be a fit with some of the RPO like they use a lot of those RPO concepts.
Man, you just want that "Fly Eagles Fly" song. Don't lie.
Yeah, that's it. But I just think he's really limited as a thrower.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he has the arm strength to push the ball downfield. His accuracy outside the hash is a scatter shot.
Terrible decision making at times.
Yeah, at times. I don't think it's that bad, but he can make some bad decisions. But to his credit, he's a really good leader. From what I understand, he's the only 3-time captain in Ohio State program history, which is like Ohio State or not, that's impressive.
Right.
But I just as a quarterback,
I just don't see it. I
at least not as a starter. I don't, but yeah. I could be wrong.
Well, and I gave him a shot before I scouted him. I was like, all right, statistically, he stands out. He works. It all pans out for him statistically. Then I put on the tape. I put a thread together on Twitter, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, holy, this is bad. And then I was just like, nope, he's not a quarterback. And Michael Kist actually was like, hey, no, Russ, he's not a quarterback. Just stop. And I was like, you're right, Mike. He's not a quarterback at all. But what about Riley Ferguson? What's your thoughts on him?
See, I've watched Riley Ferguson in a couple games this year. Watching the Tigers is fun. They throw the ball a lot. Mike Norvell's real fun, but I think he has a lot of physical tools. I think a lot of the things that people like about Josh Allen, he has, not to the same extent that Josh Allen does.
Mm-hmm.
You won't find Riley Ferguson in round one conversation, but as a day 3 guy, I'd really like him. I'd like him as a project for the Lions just because he kind of has that. His playing style kind of reminds me of early career Stafford. I don't think that he's as physically gifted as Stafford is, but that kind of intrigues me. See how Jim Bob Cooter worked that, because I'm not a big Jake Rudock fan, the backup for the Lions, former Michigan and Iowa quarterback.
Right.
I'd like to see them do something with that on day 3, just kind of dip their toes in the water. And Riley Ferguson is somebody I've been eyeing.
It'll be tough for the Lions to do it because they've got 5 picks, and I don't know if they'll be able. It'll be hard for them to go out and be like, "Hey, we're going to go draft a 3rd string quarterback." But I see what you're saying. I think it would make a lot of sense to go out and get Riley Ferguson, or even not so much JT Barrett, but it would make sense to go out and get a guy like that who he's got the arm strength, he's got all the tools that you're looking for. He's just not as physically gifted as other quarterbacks yet. I just don't see, the Lions going out and taking a flyer when they need so much depth elsewhere along that offensive line, up front in the trenches on the defense. You need a running back. It's going to be hard for them to do it unless they, and like I said, as we've talked about it before, I think, the only guy offensively outside of Stafford, Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, guys that they're not going to trade, the only guy that they would consider trading that I think has any value is Amir Abdullah. And I'm going to just kind of throw this trade out to you. Do you think he's a guy that could potentially be traded? And if so, what's the value behind the trade? Is it a 5th rounder? Is it a 3rd rounder?
Full disclosure, I have never been good at gauging players' values in trades. I'm trying to think about somebody who would need Amir Abdullah. I just can't see his value being great right now. Obviously, he was not used extensively down the stretch. kind of fell out of favor. They've used Theo Riddick more. And this is a great running back class.
Right. Well, you don't think Seattle would be like, oh, you're going to get rid of Amir? Well, we'll take him for a 4th rounder, 5th rounder.
I think that's a bit too rich, but I'm not sure.
That's right.
I'm a team. I'm probably not going to give up a 4th for Amir Abdullah, especially in this year's class, unless you just think he's a workhorse. I thought it'd be a breakout year for him. I might have been wrong. I told a buddy of mine that I thought Amir Abdullah had top 10 talent going into this year, and I think it's safe to say that was not my best take.
Yeah, that was a pretty bad take, man. That was really bad.
But I just don't know that in this year he has value right now, just because free agency is around the corner. You have some good free agent backs: Dion Lewis, Isaiah Crowell, Carlos Hyde, to name a few. Rex Burkhead is interesting. And then obviously you've got a really, really deep running back class. So if I'm a team like Seattle, I'd much rather stand pat in the 4th round and get somebody, that's going to be with the team for a lot longer, one of my guys, than give up a 4th round pick for a back that has a Liz Frank injury, fell out of favor with his own team. I think his deal is going to expire because he was drafted in 15, 16, 17. Yeah, so he's expiring. I just don't know how much value he has.
Right. Well, and I just kind of bring it up just simply because the Lions, obviously, they need more picks. 5 picks is not going to cut it. They're going to have to make a move somewhere along the line. I think he's probably the only guy that you could think of potentially moving, where probably, it won't cost the team a ton. And I said 4th, 5th round pick, just I don't know. I threw a number out there. But no, I mean, you're right 100%. I was never a fan of the Abdullah pick. I don't think there's really a big market for him. If a team had, let's say Cleveland, they've got a ton of picks. They're like, oh, you know what? We'll give you a 6th rounder. The Lions go ahead and do that. That makes sense, but it'll be interesting as to how that all pans out. But let's move on from the Shrine game. Before we do that, do you have anything else to add, obviously, but also do you have any predictions for tomorrow? Is any player that might just blow up completely and you're like, I'm calling this right now, shot in the dark?
I don't have any predictions. I'm really curious to see how T. Gray Scales does, because I see a lot of people hyping him.
I don't see it on tape, I'll be honest.
I don't either. He's fast. I think he probably has some positional versatility because he's got, his size. He's like 6'2", 230. You could probably make him a lighter middle linebacker if you wanted. He can blitz off the edge. He looks pretty fluid in coverage. But anytime I see a guy struggle to take on blocks inside the tackle ball, like in between the tackles, and both at the line of scrimmage and at the second level, and also just take bad angles to the outside. As a linebacker, it's kind of like, what are you doing for me? I mean, he might be, I see talk of him as a day 2 pick, 2nd, 3rd round linebacker, and I get that the linebacking class has not been great, for 2 years in a row, really.
Yeah.
But outside of pass coverage, you could probably use him as a 3rd down linebacker, blitz him, drop him into coverage. But I'd have to see something from him or some good reports from him at the Shrine game for me to take a look at him in the 2nd, 3rd round, because I just don't see it on tape.
Right. I agree. I don't see it on tape either. I think he does some things okay in coverage, but I think he's slow at reacting on it. I think he over pursues, misses tackles, arm tackles. But, that's just my evaluation. If other guys see it, that's cool too. For me, the guy that I think needs to kind of stand out tomorrow is Dearness Johnson from South Florida.
Ooh, good name.
I'm going to say it simply because the running back class is so deep, but he's got the chance that I think I'm not saying top 5 back or anything like that, but I think he's a guy that's on the outside of the top 10 looking in. If he wants to get into the top 10 discussion and potentially pretty much solidify himself as a for sure draft pick, I think he's got to have a pretty good day tomorrow. I think he can. I think he could potentially, run for over 100 yards. I could see him doing, a touchdown. So it would be cool to see that. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's a physical runner. I like that he goes downhill quickly. So it'll be interesting. That's my guy tomorrow. That's my bold pick for the Shrine game. But moving on from the Shrine game, let's focus on the Senior Bowl because that's where I'll be. I'm super excited to be in Mobile. I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm going to be in Mobile, Alabama. I've one place I never thought I would actually go and visit, but I'm actually – don't ever say that on this podcast ever again. You're a Sooner fan, aren't you?
I am.
So why would you say that? Never say that.
Because I have to make fun of the state of Alabama. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Okay, that's fair. Whatever. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell at you, Bryce.
No, that's okay. I'm used to it.
Oh, that's true. Anyways, so it's exciting. A lot of stuff that's going to be happening over the next week with this podcast. We're going to be having a ton of stuff next week as far as going to have some Cover One guys on here, potentially having some player interviews, seeing what we can do. I have no idea. I'm probably going to drop the ball. It's going to be great. I'll be like a Michigan punter having trouble with the snap. It's going to be fantastic. Can't wait. So anyways, Senior Bowl, looking at the roster, looking at some of the things that I know we've got a ton of guys that aren't going to be in it. I'm not going to go over that quote-unquote list. I'm kind of mad that Maurice Hurst is not going to be there, but it is what it is. Who are some guys that you think are going to impress you or need to impress you? Let's start with who's going to impress you from what you're going to read from the Senior Bowl.
Just naming some names. I think Baker Mayfield will impress.
Ooh, Oklahoma.
That's my homer pick. Kind of mandatory. I might get some flack for this, but I think Josh Allen will impress.
Oh, don't do that.
And I don't say that because I'm a Josh Allen fan. I say that because when you think about what the Senior Bowl is, and they're installing very basic defenses, and because these aren't full, like the games aren't going to be as fast because they're not going to be as used to their assignments. They haven't practiced together, so I think things will slow down for him a bit. So I think he'll look better than he is just because of the nature of the Senior Bowl. Mm-hmm. So I think that caters – I think he'll show off what people liked about him a year ago well. So I think he'll help himself a bit. I don't know how much NFL evaluators weight the Senior Bowl game, but I think he should look good in the game and in practices. I think so that's another one. Just going down the list here. I think Will Hernandez will impress. I think he's going to help himself out because obviously being a smaller school guy, going up against better competition.
Well, and I'm going to piggyback onto this here, and I'm going to tell you, I think Will Hernandez going into this right now is probably the top guard. I would not be surprised. Really? I think I'm not
over Quentin Nelson.
No. At the Senior Bowl, sorry.
Okay.
No,
I was very confused. I was about to say, whoa, that is a hot take.
No. Quentin Nelson is my favorite player in the draft, hands down. But no, he's definitely one of the, he's the top guard in this Senior Bowl. But you're going to see, I think, some guys that are really going to turn some heads. Sean Welsh from Iowa, I think, is very talented. I think Wyatt Teller from Virginia Tech is very talented. We're going to see a couple of guys that I think solidify themselves as offensive guards. Cole Madison, intriguing guy. I watched him, watched 5 of his games from Washington State. He played right tackle for 47 freaking games. He goes to the Senior Bowl. He's going to play inside as a guard, I think simply to show his versatility. But I wouldn't be surprised if he has a strong week. So those are just – I'm keeping it in mind. I think Will Hernandez is very talented, but I would not be surprised if some guys come out on top in front of him. So, you have every right to say Will Hernandez is going to be the top guard, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if some other guys are not. But go ahead.
Isaiah Wynn is good too.
That's the next guy I was getting into. But go ahead.
He should look good. Marcus Davenport will probably help himself quite a bit if he does well. And being another small school guy.
Do you think he's a top 15 guy? I've seen a lot of stuff where he's kind of all over the place, and I want to bring up a question for you because this is going to be my Twitter poll for the night over the next 24 hours, but I'm going to ask you, do you think he is a top 15 guy? That's not the Twitter poll, by the way.
Top 15?
Yes. I've seen him at number 7?
7 to Tampa Bay.
To Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I've watched a couple games of his, but just based on what I've seen, I think that's a little rich.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the only edges I would take top 15 would be Chubb, Landry.
That's fair.
I
would agree with you. And I think Davenport's right outside. If you want to say top 25, sure. 15's a little rich. Top 20. I think he's a first rounder at this point. I think he's definitely a little raw, but I've seen like the whole Ziggy Ansah rise to the top thing, and I can't really disagree with it, kind of coming out of nowhere. And I think he could be that guy. But my Twitter question is going to be Tremaine Edmonds from Virginia Tech, the linebacker, and then you have Marcus Davenport, the defensive end out of UTSA. Those are the two guys right now that are getting a ton of praise from Twitter. And I've seen both of them in the top 15. Which one of those guys would you take? You don't have to give me an answer, but that's my question. And if I would prefer that you give me an answer, but you don't have to. So Edmonds from Vatech, Davenport from UTSA.
I can't give you a good answer on that because I have yet to get into Edmonds. I've only read reports on him.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a little bit of Davenport, but I haven't written up a full evaluation on him yet, so I can't make an educated decision on that. If you'll allow me to infer based on what I've read, probably Edmonds.
Right.
But that's just based on other people's opinions, so that's not the strongest of stances that I have.
That's fair. No, I'm going to put it on Twitter and we'll see what the people say. I was just curious. I didn't know where you were on evaluations. I know you're all over the place, Bryce. You're watching pro guys, college guys. It's all good, man. Moving on, though, Senior Bowl, for me, as far as some guys that I think are going to stand out in Mobile, Mike McCray, linebacker out of Michigan. Can't believe I'm saying that. But I really like him as a 3-4 guy. I think the first team that comes to mind whenever I watch him play is the Baltimore Ravens, simply because they've pretty much been dipping into the Michigan pool and pulling out players left and right. Mike McCray would be one of those guys that I think fits what they're looking for. Might be a day 3 guy, but I think he's going to have a pretty good Senior Bowl week. I'm expecting that at 6'4", 248 is what he's listed at as an inside linebacker. I think he's going to probably bounce around, rushing off the edge. I think he's definitely more of a blitzing type of player. So the biggest thing is he a 3-down linebacker? I don't know. I don't think his coverage skills are great yet. So I don't think he's a 3-down guy. I think he's simply a 2-down guy. Next, Cedric Wilson, wide receiver out of Boise State. Josh Norris, very reliable source on Twitter. He's been putting out a ton of stuff regarding him and kind of caught my eye. I went and watched him. Very impressive kid. I think he's got a lot of upside. He's 6'3", $190. I like him as a possession guy. He can run. I don't think he can run every route in the route tree, but he's very talented. I think he's going to really showcase his skills and have quite the rise. Harrison Phillips, defensive tackle out of Stanford. A lot of people know about him. I think everybody's going to know about him after the Senior Bowl. I think he's going to have a dominant week. He's a strong kid. He goes power for power against anybody. I mean, I watched him play against Notre Dame, and he was going up against Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey, these guys. And at one point throughout the first quarter, he played and lined up against every single Notre Dame offensive lineman and either stalemated them or beat them in a repetition. I expect no different in a basic offense and basic defensive set in Mobile. And then the last two I got Ian Thomas, tight end out of Indiana. I really like him. And Troy Fumagalli, tight end out of Wisconsin. Two Big Ten guys. I'm a big fan of these guys. Troy Fumagalli, I think potentially has the skill set and the poise to be the top tight end in this class. I'm a big fan. I wrote about him on cover1.net. I like him as an inline blocker. I like him as a vertical threat receiver. He runs very well to the hashes, getting to the sideline, and running those types of routes. So I'm intrigued to see what he does in Mobile. Those are guys that we like. Is there anybody on the list of the roster that you think might just kind of be like, he's here, but he's not going to do much?
Trying to go through and see. Kurt Benkert might be one of those guys, but it's hard for me to say on him just because he'll look amazing for a stretch and then just look like he's absolutely god awful because he has no consistency whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of those guys I think is a threat to kind of go ghost, or even worse, look bad. I'm trying to see. I don't see a lot of guys on the South team where I think they're just going to disappear.
Right.
Let me switch to the North team.
I'll bring up a question for you for guys on the North team. There's two running backs on here. They've gotten praise preseason, and that's Akram Wadley out of Iowa and Kalen Ballage out of Arizona State. These are two guys that got a ton of preseason hype. Ballage had a terrible year, and Wadley had, what he does. He was explosive, looked the part, but he's not getting a lot of hype. Is there do you think there's a reason to why these two guys aren't getting a ton of buzz, or do you think it's just simply because it is so deep of a running back class that it's like they're just two guys that are on the list? We'll take them. They'll be talented. We move on.
Well, Ballage didn't, as you noted, Ballage didn't have a great year, from what I understand, in terms of a production standpoint. So that probably drove him down.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I'm not a fly on the wall in NFL front offices, but I have to imagine that most NFL teams, it raises a question when you see a guy like that with his physical gifts and the production doesn't match. You say, okay, what's going on?
Right. No matter what the scheme is, too. Like, it was like the year before, it really stood out, and it was like, all right, this guy's going to break out next year. And then, boom, he just hit a wall and did nothing. So, yes, you're absolutely right. It's going to be what's going on with this guy. Is he just, doing something off the field, or is it something on the field that he's not picking up?
And then Akram Wadley, part of it is how deep the class is. But I think a lot of teams, he's listed 5'11", 190. 191 on the Senior Bowl roster. I think he's probably going to weigh in closer to 180 if I had to guess. And I think that probably scares teams.
Right.
Because anytime you're going to give the ball to a guy, 15 plus times a game in the NFL, you can't have, it's hard to feel good that a guy that's, 180, 190 pounds is going to hold up
right
against NFL tacklers. I think that hurts him. Not to say that he can't be a good running back in the NFL, but I think that's probably his biggest holdup on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I agree. I think he, and I like the things that I saw from Wadley when I watched him. I thought he was very explosive. I thought he displayed good balance and vision. I really liked the cutting ability that I saw. He was able to just kind of plant, jump, cut, and go. But it was simply, he looks just undersized for the position on a Sunday. When you're watching a game, is he going to be able to take that beating time and time again? So I'm a little worried about him moving forward. I think he can be very talented, but where does he fall in this deep class? I mean, we've talked about Chubb. We've talked about all these guys last week, and I think he's one of those guys that kind of just falls out of the group and is going to really need to find the right team to kind of take a chance on him and for him to fit something with like a number one back in front of him to where he can be a solid number two behind that said player, whoever that may be. Like maybe putting him behind Melvin Gordon and with the Chargers would be a fantastic fit in my opinion, but you never really know. But let's move on to my last question on the Senior Bowl, and then we'll get to the picks. Fly, Eagles, fly, and we'll fly out of here. Is there a specific player that you want me to pay attention to for you at the Senior Bowl? I'll do everything I can. I just kind of want to know.
I want to see how Obo Okoronkwo does. That's another homer pick.
Okay.
I think he's got a lot of skill. I just want to make sure that he wins more than just speed rush to the edge and then that spin or inside counter he's got. Because you can't win in the NFL consistently, just inside counter. Teams will, especially teams with mobile quarterbacks, will break the pocket on you, and you can't do that. So I want to make sure that he can win in ways, not just with burst and with that inside move he likes.
All right. Well, I'll definitely I'll be with defensive linemen probably for a good part of every practice, so I'll be paying close attention to that guy for sure for you. I'll keep notes on it, and I'll put it on Twitter. Or I'll just message it to you, whatever. But, all right, let's move to the picks. Championship weekend. We're finally here. NFC Championship, AFC Championship. It's crazy how Minnesota even got in. Maybe the greatest play we'll ever see.
I want to be dead.
Vikings, Eagles, Patriots, Jaguars. Let's start with the Patriots and Jaguars. Who do you got winning and why? Do I need to ask this question?
I think it is a question because if Brady's busted up, that's a huge question because I think the Jags, they're not the better coach team, but they probably are more talented.
Mm-hmm.
All around, maybe not on the offensive side of the ball, but their defense is more talented. Man, I'm not going to pick against Belichick, and I'm not going to pick against Brady in a big game, regardless of whether or not he's limited. That's just not good for your health. So I'm going to ride with the Patriots. I think it might be a little closer than Patriots fans would like, but It'll be the Patriots if you put a gun to my head.
Yeah, I think the Jaguars defense is legit. There's no doubt about it. But Tom Brady's Tom Brady, man. He gets in another level, and even if the Patriots were down 28-3 against the Jaguars in Foxborough, I feel pretty confident about the Patriots' chances of pulling this one out. So I think the Patriots are going back to Super Bowl. I don't see how I can pick against them. That's kind of pretty much like a rule. Don't pick against Belichick and Brady. NFC Championship, we've got Vikings, Philly. Who you got, man?
I have got the Eagles, my dear, beloved Eagles. Case Keenum was the worst quarterback under pressure by far in the divisional round. I think that the Eagles' pass rush is really good. They've got really good defensive line depth. Graham, Cox, Jernigan, Chris Long, all those guys. I think they'll do a good job of getting after him and making him uncomfortable. It'll probably be a more of a defensive game, but I like the Eagles in a close one. And I saw something on Twitter from Dan Orlovsky. He made a good point. It's been a month since the Minnesota Vikings have played outside.
For real?
Yes, it's been a month since they've played outside.
Oh, my. Skull.
So that's got to be a factor. Eagles obviously have had home field advantage. They're used to playing outside. So I think that gives them a bit of an edge. I'm riding with my Eagles.
What's the score? Eagles, Vikings, what's the score?
I'm going to say 17-20 Eagles.
All right. I am going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles at home to make it to the Super Bowl. As an NFC North guy with the Detroit Lions, I have to go against the Minnesota Vikings because I don't care about teams from my division winning games like the Big Ten winning conference championships or whatever. If it's not Michigan State, I could care less. If it's not the Detroit Lions, I could care less. And the Minnesota Vikings, they haven't played outside in a month. I don't see how it's going to pan out. I mean, granted, they've probably been practicing in an outdoor facility in Minnesota where it's freaking cold. But, I mean, Case Keenum under pressure, Eagles defense, bringing the pressure. I like it. I think Ronald Darby actually looked pretty solid last week. I think he's going to get even better. So I like the Eagles, even though they've got Nick Foles. I think that run game can kind of balance things out. I feel confident. I'm going to say 17-14, Eagles fly. And that brings us to the best part of the show where we're closing this thing off. Well, that's not the best part, but the best part is Bryce singing Fly, Eagles, Fly. He's probably got the words right in front of him, but that's fine.
If I was going to bring them up just to make sure, I practiced for this. I'll have to know. So I feel decent about my ability to recite it from memory. So if you want me to do that, I will. But I admittedly was going to cheat. I definitely was going to cheat. But I will not if you want me to be a gentleman about it.
I would want you to be a gentleman. I mean, if we were having beers and I had to drink right now, I would definitely be a gentleman and drink. But we're not doing that. We're you singing Fly, Eagles, Fly. That's what we're doing, and I want you to be a gentleman because this is a gentleman's game. Do you want me to play music for you? I don't know if that's going to work for the audience, but
I don't know. I think I just got to do it a cappella.
Acapella, man, this guy, Bryce, I love you, man. You're awesome.
Let me get a drink of water real quick.
Okay, drink of water. We'll be back in 30. Message from our sponsors. Bryce Rossler singing Fly, Eagles, Fly, probably looking at the lyrics. Would you have to go down to the well to get this? Where you at?
The well? No, I had my water bottle right by me. It's actually Powerade Zero, but
okay.
I'm not a shill for the Coca-Cola company, so I wasn't going to drop their name. I was just going to say water.
Well, you dropped their name. That's okay.
I know. That's what you made me do.
You want me to count this down from 3 for you, or do you just want to go into it?
I'll just get this embarrassing fiasco over with.
It feels like Step Brothers right now. You know what I mean? Like we're becoming best friends. This is great.
God, somewhere Mike Kist is just laughing like a hyena. Damn you, Kist.
All right. What about Solak? He's great too.
Yeah, Solak. I love Solak. He's awesome.
He is awesome.
He's not one. He probably doesn't get the level of Schadenfreude that Kist does. I mean, Kist just. He is a maniac.
Yeah.
And he loves seeing his friends and enemies alike fare poorly. So, anyway, here it goes. Fly, Eagles, fly on a road to victory. Fight, Eagles, fight. Yes. Score a touchdown, 1, 2, 3. Hit 'em low, hit 'em high as we watch our Eagles fly. Fly, Eagles, fly. On a road to victory. EAGLES, Eagles.